Okay, so today I'm going to be talking about 10 big mistakes that attorneys make many times in large law firms, and also 10 ways to survive in large law firms. This is a pretty important webinar, I think, from the standpoint that attorneys end up making these mistakes in their careers. Hopefully, I will help you to get through and understand what these mistakes are. One of the things about getting and keeping a job in a large law firm is it can be extremely competitive. For most attorneys, when you enter a large law firm after law school, so you've worked very hard to get there, and there's a lot of study and sacrifice that takes you there. What I'm going to talk about today are a lot of unwritten rules that you need to follow to thrive in a large law firm. And this is also a time when a lot of attorneys are thinking about leaving the practice of law, and so I'd like to help you with those rules so you can understand the things you need to avoid. One of the biggest observations I have is that a lot of attorneys who join large law firms out of law school, many times it's the highest paid job that they'll ever have. And a great number of them, that's the case. And this applies even those who join smaller firms. And obviously in New York and Los Angeles, if you're in a major law firm, you can make even more than $200,000 a year when you're right out of school. And for a lot of attorneys with more than 15 years of experience, they, in different practice settings or even in smaller law firms, they do not make as much as you'd make coming out of law school and joining a major law firm. The big thing I think to understand is that most attorneys who join the largest law firms out of law school never work at firms as prestigious ever again. They frequently may move a few times to large law firms before stepping out of a large law firm into something smaller and different. And the odds are pretty good that if you started a large or major law firm and you move to a smaller one, that you're never going to work in a law firm the same size again, which is fairly scary. And I would say that one of the problems that I think large law firms are very good, but at the same time, I would say that about half of the attorneys who join large law firms out of law school are really likely to be practicing law out of, and within the next 10 years. And I would say more than 85% who join smaller firms continue practicing. So there's definitely some positives and negatives to joining large law firms, but I do think that there's a lot of rules and things that can be very difficult to work in a large law firm. And I don't know why there's so much attrition in large law firms. I think to some extent, a lot of attorneys in large law firms end up becoming many times burned out and demoralized. And not only that, but many attorneys who just join large law firms end up leaving the practice of law entirely. And in addition to that, if you start your career in a major law firm and then you move, you're most often not going to be working on matters as large and important as you're working on a large law firm again. And so that most of your career is going to be dedicated if you move and don't stay in a large law firm to service in smaller clients. If you don't stick in a large law firm, the truth is that most of your career is more than likely, not always, of course, not even 99% of the time, but more than likely, you're going to be making less money. You're going to be working on matters with less prestige. There's even a possibility you may not be practicing law. And I think all that says something. I think it says that big law firm life, of course, is not for everyone. But I also think that a lot of people don't remain in large law firms because they don't understand how to keep the jobs. One thing is that there's rules to keeping the jobs, but there's also things about emotional maturity and understanding kind of the rules of the game that I think are important to understand. And one of the things I really would encourage you to realize is that there are a lot of benefits to staying with a large law firm. And I deal with candidates all the time that come to me and are asking me if they should stay in a large law firm. And many times I counsel them not to, but just as larger percentage of the time I counsel them to stay in a large law firm, because not only can you do much better from an income standpoint, but there's a prestige that comes with it and other benefits that result from being able to commit to a large law firm. The fact is that when you're in a large law firm, most of the time you're able to work on very challenging legal work, much more challenging than you'll do in-house. Most in-house companies give their most challenging work to the largest law firms. The largest companies will give their work to large law firms. They won't do it in-house, and they use outside law firms. And so working inside of a law firm has a lot of advantage. So here are the biggest mistakes that I see that attorneys make at large law firms that will end their careers. And the first one, of course, is I believe is getting psyched out. I remember when I was practicing law at a large law firm that no longer is in business, but I was at a cocktail party one evening, and one of the mid-level associates was joking with a partner about how no one had made partner in this law firm for over 12 years. And then the partner that was very clear. He said, "Well, that's because everyone leaves." And I think that there's a lot of truth to that. I think that people leave firms for a variety of reasons, but I think one of the things is that it's the people that are able to stick it out and succeed who succeed in the long run. It's often the people with the most staying power. And when I look back at the people that I knew when I was young that became very successful partners, a lot of these were the people that kept their heads down, worked hard, didn't gossip, and for the most part, really wouldn't even think about working in another law firm. They were very committed to working in a law firm and committed to the law firm they were at. There is a sense of loyalty that law firms have with people that were summer associates, for example, in John Reynolds Law School. I think that for the morale of the firm, people want to feel like that people can start at the bottom and rise to become partners. And so I think that if you join a firm at a young age, I think you get a lot of political capital the longer you stay there. I think that there's people to protect you. And I think that people also get psyched out. I think they get psyched out from a lot of reasons. I think one of the reasons is because the reviews, especially with young attorneys and even mid-level attorneys have no idea what they're doing. They will make various mistakes and blunders on a consistent basis. And even the most diligent, there's always partners that may have weak egos, who take great pride in putting people down and love to prove how little they know. And this is perfectly normal. It's part of the process of learning, and that people will respond in different ways. And sometimes reviews can be very brutal in firms. You can work with people that are not nice. The reviewers often are not nice. They don't always make you feel appreciated. And their goal really is to make sure you improve. And when the economy is weak, their goal may be to get you to be the first to leave. And this is difficult, especially for young attorneys that may have been praised in school and by their parents. And this negative type of feedback is not something they're used to. And no one likes negative feedback. No one likes hearing negative things about them, especially when they're working 80 hours a week in a law firm for a faceless client. It's very difficult getting negative feedback. I've seen many attorneys leave when they get negative reviews or they don't feel appreciated or they feel like they're not doing something wrong and they feel insecure. And I completely understand that feeling. It's certainly something that a lot of people feel, and it's perfectly normal. Even the most successful attorneys will often feel like they could do better. And from my experience, what I've seen in terms of talking to junior associates throughout the years is a junior associate typically is not that profitable for a firm. Once you've been in a firm and you're a mid-level and you're 3 to 6 years, then you are profitable. But junior associates are often not profitable because they're learning, they make mistakes, they don't understand how things are done. There's just a lot of things they don't understand. And so law firms often have to write off a lot of their time. They may be doing things improperly. And so the law firm will often give them negative reviews, and those reviews are really geared towards making them improving and just driving them up to the level where they're very profitable and where they're doing the kind of work that the firm needs. When they get to that level, which not everyone does, then the law firm typically will start giving them very good reviews because at 3 to 6 years, a very hardworking associate is very valuable to the firm because they don't have to write off a lot of their time. They can give them a lot of work to do. Their billing rates are low enough that they're not really threatening to partners or anybody. And then they start getting very good reviews. And when I read the reviews of mid-level associates, and a lot of people that may have gotten bad reviews when they were junior associates start getting very good reviews as mid-level associates. And all of a sudden, they think that they're walking on water. Everyone's told they're on the right track and things are looking good, implying that they're going to be partners. And by this point, people are secure enough that they will start getting married and having children and purchasing homes. And they often will bring home reviews and leave them around the house. And everybody will be very happy and believe that things are going extremely well. It's very common for mid-levels to get very good reviews. And it's just a rule. So if you're a mid-level, as long as you're doing your job halfway decently, you're going to get very good reviews. The point is that when you're a junior associate, you're almost always going to get bad reviews. And the idea is that when you're junior and your firms are having to write off your time and you're not doing things and you're not up to speed with everything, the law firm's going to believe that you're going to improve and get to a point where you're going to be very profitable and fall in line. And everyone needs to be trained. You don't really learn how to be an attorney when you're in law school. You learn about all this stuff when you get out. And once you become a mid-level, the law firm will start being very nice to you and really making you feel like you're doing a good job. Once you get to be year seven or maybe a little bit more, then the interviews start to not get as good. And the reason is basically because your billing rate rises to the level of partners. I don't want to get too far into it, but it becomes more difficult for the law firm to start sharing work with you because your billing rate's competitive with partners and becomes, unless the law firm has a lot of work, the reviews start becoming not necessarily positive. They may become opaque or not make a lot of sense or just vague, or they may be good. But at the same time, typically the pattern is that they start not being as good. The other thing to understand with all reviews is that law firms go through ups and downs. They're businesses. The law firms may have issues caused by losing clients. They may have issues caused by recessions. They may have issues caused by partners leaving. There's all sorts of issues that can affect law firms. When this happens, law firms are often under a lot of pressure to either cut the associates there, especially the ones that aren't profitable, or get them to leave. So there's all sorts of times, and it could be just your practice area. It could be the makeup of your law firm's, your particular office. You might be in an office where things aren't going well. The negative review is a way to get people to start leaving. They're often a sham, meaning they are not real, and you should not take them seriously. You should realize that they're not necessarily a reflection on you. They're more a reflection on the company, the law firm, and what's going on there. And just understand that when you get a bad review during a recession, the law firm will be honest with you and they'll just say things aren't going well for us. But most of the time, a lot of law firms are very protective of the brand. So they try to put it on you, which is unfortunate. But just realize that being in a law firm where that's happened is not pleasant. And if the law firm is being overly harsh, it could be more to do with them than you. Another thing is that difficult or undesirable legal matters may upset people. I once was representing a client from New Jersey who was operating a front business that had been sued first at some matter by a Chinese company. At one point, the guy called me on his cell phone and gave me a speech about this is when cell phones weren't that common and threatened me with some sort of physical violence if I didn't get the result he wanted. I realized he probably wasn't serious, which I'm sure he wasn't. And I told him I'd meet him anywhere and fight him and stuff. And then a few minutes later, it was funny, the partner that was assigned to the case showed up at my door looking happy and said the guy respected me and I didn't want anybody at him working on my case. But the point is that different clients can affect you in different ways. Different kinds of legal matters can affect you in different ways. And a lot of people might have been threatened and really upset by that. I realized that the guy probably wasn't serious. He was just trying to get his way. And I realized from the perspective, this person was just testing me. Different attorneys would have reacted in different ways, probably. The other thing is a lot of people will leave firms if they're confronted with a tough legal matter or a difficult client. I've seen people leave. They've been put into small cities in the middle of nowhere and having to spend a lot of time there and quit. And I've seen others not quit. I've seen the people quit because of being relocated to a certain city. I've seen people quit and just walk off the job a lot of times. I've seen people leave because of different types of legal matters they're put on. And so what I would recommend is that when you are put on things you don't like, it is important to not necessarily leave because it doesn't look good. And I think it can be very difficult. And I saw one guy leave at one of the largest firms in the Bay Area leave because when he was interviewing, he told partners in the firm that he wanted to do white collar litigation. And he would also be happy doing regular litigation. He was hired in the litigation department and the firm didn't have any white collar litigation for him. And so they started giving him all these commercial litigation assignments and he refused to do them on the grounds that he only wanted to do white collar litigation. And the firm let him go and basically blackballed him. They would not give him a good representative and he's got good reviews. And he's been working as a contract attorney ever since. Leaving a firm or getting psyched out because of difficult legal matters, sometimes it's difficult partners and things can be a real mistake. And it's not something that I recommend doing. You need to be very careful. Another thing that can really psych people out is the promise of a better lifestyle at another firm. And so what a lot of times attorneys will do is they're under the impression that if they join another firm, they may suddenly not have to work as hard or have nicer colleagues or earn as much money and the grass really is going to be a lot greener. When I first started practicing law in Los Angeles, a friend of mine called telling me how cool his firm was. And then he said that I could do entertainment law and talk to Hollywood producers all day long. And then we'll be making all sorts of deals and things. And it sounded really good to me. And he told me that these guys were even too cool to work in the office and they were running around. And I didn't know it at the time, but they were offering, this firm was offering their associates a bounty if they could bring in other attorneys And this law firm was nowhere near the type of firm that I was working at the time. And I decided to go interview there. And when I got to the firm, I realized it wasn't a fun place. They didn't have a lot of work. And I've been conned to some extent by going there and to believe it was a better place. And a lot of attorneys do that. People will point things out about their current firm to them. They may believe there's something wrong with their current firm and the hours and the stress and the types of cases. And they believe that this can only be solved by going somewhere else. And this is sometimes true, but not always. And the things that firms say many times when they're recruiting people are often the opposite of what happens when someone's working there. A law firm is a business. And as a business, they want to make as much money as possible. And in order to make money, law firms need to bill the maximum number of hours. And if they have billable work, law firms will often focus on it to increase their revenue. And so if you work there, you will have to do that work. And in reality, even though every law firm has a pitch, the pitch of being a lifestyle firm is really not realistic, because if the firm does get a bunch of work, it's no longer a lifestyle firm. They will make sure that attorneys working there are working as much as possible. And if when they have a pressing matter or client willing to, and I once had Sultan Brunei as a client, and if he wanted something done, he basically would want it done in the best way possible, and every single angle question. And when he had something that needed to be done, I was expected to work as many hours a day as possible, because he wanted to go as his attorneys to go all out and do the very best job they could. And the concerns about my lifestyle didn't matter. And if a law firm has a large client, the client's willing to pay, then the person will do the work. And you have to do the work. It's as simple as that. So it's important to understand if someone is promoting to you a lifestyle firm or something along those lines, it's probably not true. If someone's promoting to you a law firm that's cooler, a better place to work, it's probably not true. And it's just, you need to be aware that anytime the grass seems greener, it's not always the truth. Another thing that psychs people out is a poor bonus. So a lot of attorneys will quit after receiving a small bonus. And you never know why you may have received a small bonus. It could be a variety of factors that have nothing to do with you. Many people receive very small bonuses because the law firms have made promises to other partners and there's not enough money left for you. The small bonus may be disappointing, but it's certainly not a sign that the law firm likes you. Working in a law firm as an attorney is really a long race. And sometimes the law firms may not just have the money to pay a bonus, or maybe they're just not going to for whatever reason. And your long-term success and happiness should not be determined just by one bonus. And one of the things, the test of being a large law firm, I think, is that you have to have the ability to deal with the good times and the bad. And a lot of law firms will not give bonuses because they actually want to see how committed you are. And many people consciously will not give bonus. And so I've heard, again, this is an example where I knew someone that was a senior associate in a large law firm, and he was very close to partnership and wasn't getting a bonus. And he was told by someone else that he knew they were doing this as a test to him, because there was no buy-in to the firm or something if you wanted to become a partner, and they wanted to see who would stay and go with no bonus. And a few months later, after not receiving a bonus, he actually made partner. Making decisions about whether to leave firms because of a mistake and so forth, or not getting a bonus, can be a real mistake. And that's another thing that psychs people out. Another thing that can psych people out is making a bad mistake. A lot of young attorneys can make a lot of mistakes, and they can include missing filing deadlines, misapplying the law to some matter, upsetting people that are higher up than them by saying something inappropriate or doing something stupid, turning the sign late, or just making a big mistake that may lose a case. And a lot of times attorneys in these situations may feel they made a career-ending mistake, and the only way for them to redeem themselves is by leaving. And what's important to understand, especially if you've made a mistake, a lot of times the mistakes will be held against you, and excuse me, just one second. And you may be a very serious career thing. But at the same time, for the most part, attorneys are expected to make mistakes, especially when they're young. And almost all attorneys have made serious mistakes. And the worst thing you can do many times is to take the mistakes you make too seriously. If you make a serious mistake, you need to learn your lesson. Don't make the same error again, and then move on as quickly as possible. Because if you dwell on it, others will too. And the way to really gain respect is to overcome the situation, persevere and improve. And you don't want to be a loser and give up if you made a bad mistake. You just want to move on. The other thing that psychs a lot of people out is being treated poorly by their superiors. One time I was sitting in my office working on a brief. I had a treatise inside of me that I took down to the library. And a very important partner who'd actually interviewed me when I had applied to the firm came into stormed into my office and screamed, "Give me the effing book." And I was very upset by that. I was actually shocked. And I never worked with him, but I didn't understand why he was acting this way. And I was very confused and upset by it. And so for the next several nights, I just thought about what did I do? What happened? I didn't understand how someone could treat me this way in the firm. And I thought, should I leave the job? What had I done? And was there something that I was unaware of that I'd done? And I didn't know it at the time, but he was actually in the middle of losing his job. He was being sued by a secretary for sexual harassment and malpractice by a former client and all this sort of stuff. And I learned about this later, but when he did this, I felt like there was something wrong with me. And it really made me question whether or not I should be working in the firm. And so sometimes people will do things like this to you and you don't know why it's happening. And it can be very upsetting. And when that happens, I think you just realize many times it can psych you out. Another thing that psychs people out many times is feeling disfavored. So a lot of times, people will get psyched out by people around them. And I've seen people be psyched out of quite a bit of time. And most attorneys, they want to be liked. And I think the example I was gave in the previous slide is a woman that had been around someone that was burping and then complained about it later. And people she did that obviously because she wanted to be favored and not disliked. And law firms can be meritocracies and other times they're not. And what's important is to really to concentrate on your work and do the best job you can with your work. And for the most part, there's always going to be groups, popularity contests, and so forth inside of firms, and they don't always turn out well for the participants. And the reason is that if you're competing in a firm popularity contest, you're eventually going to lose and you're going to be on the disfavored side of the contest. And at some point, you'll do something wrong, upset someone socially or something of the sort. And if you become too friendly with people in your law firm, they're also going to learn the details of your personal life too, which they'll often use against you. And so you have to worry about that. And the thing I would say is that anytime you tell people, you get close to people and you make them aware of personal details, that they will frequently use those against you. So you really have to be careful about who you trust in any type of law firm, whether it's secretaries, friends, or anyone. And just realize that for the most part, you may believe you have friends, but most of the time, a lot of those people will eventually, if push comes to shove, they can definitely turn against you. And not being part of a favorite group will have its own set of advantages because you will then spare yourself the most inevitable falling out with that group at some point. And many times that can hurt you more than participating in the first place. My recommendation is to be professional with your peers, but realize that work doesn't need to be a popularity contest. And you need to be very careful with that because many times that will go against you. And the other thing too, I would say is that there's always, in every firm, there's always times when things are going your way, not going your way, and so forth. And so you need to be guarding against that. Another thing that upsets people many times is not having enough to do. That can really psych people out. A lot of law firms will get slow at one point or another. When it gets slow, it could get slow for a variety of reasons. It could be the economy, or it could be cases settling or matters going away. And when that happens, it doesn't mean you need to look for a new job. I've seen attorneys go a year or more in large law firms without any substantive work. They may have something to do here and there, but not a lot of work. And if they're not busy, you can do all sorts of things. So we can write articles, you can help with firm marketing, you can work on all sorts of different matters to draw attention to the firm that's positive. And it's certainly not a good thing to be slow, but you have to understand that at those times, it's better to try to be productive, be seen in the office and do what you can. And the work will always come back. And law firms are not stupid. They don't let people go just because it's slow. Some of them do if it's a kind of a major recession, but most of them won't. And so law firms will often do other stuff. So another thing I think that often psychs people out as well is being around people that seem more qualified. And will often psych them out based on them getting more work and other competitive people are often very good at psyching other people out. They'll brag about the reviews that they may have gotten that were good when they weren't. They will talk about rumors. They may play games. And so when you're in the midst of these games, you're up against people that are very good competitors. Some competitors will only be nice to you if you have negative information to share about your experience in the firm. Other competitors may use you to solicit negative information that they can spread around, maybe even say you were the source of. And just remember that when you're around very competitive people, these people will often do anything they can to psych you out. And you shouldn't let it affect you. The big piece of advice that I would say is just to keep your head down and really work as hard as you possibly can all the time. And most people playing these games end up having it all catch up to them eventually. And you definitely can see that happen. Another reason that people will leave is because they're not billing enough hours. And obviously, you need to bill as many hours as you possibly can within reason. Most large law firms, it's at least 2,000 hours. And the more hours you bill, then the more employment security you have. If you have 2,500 hours in most firms, so it's going to give you pretty decent employment security. But in many firms, it's even more than 2,500 hours. And billing as many hours as you can will always help you to survive. And it's just, unfortunately, that's kind of how the rules work. The more hours most attorneys bill, the better the reviews, the less likely they'll be to lose their job. And even in severe recessions, there's law firm associates and partners that manage to stay extremely busy because they're given work preferentially. And when a law firm lays people off, it often will see who's busy and who's not, and that's one reason it becomes very difficult for unemployed attorneys to find jobs. And future employers will often know that they weren't the best and we're probably not being given work. So it's something to think about. And there's just a lot of metrics that attorneys are measured by, whether it's social skills, punctuality, how they're treated by peers and subordinates, their writing ability, all those sorts of things. But one of the most important things is generally how many hours you bill. And that's the most important thing that law firms will generally look at. That's what makes the money and it's what matters. Other components of your performance are often overshadowed by that. And unfortunately, that's just how a business works. And the number of hours you bill shows the law firm the number of hours you're billing. And here's what the law firms look and learn from that number. They learn how hard you're willing to work. That shows that different people may bill more hours. Like someone that's given the same legal matters may bill 1,500 hours a year, and another person may bill 3,500. But the person that bills 3,500 is going to be more profitable law firm. In addition, if you're working all the time and billing a lot of hours, you're clearly very motivated and willing to do hard work, which is good. Law firms like people that work hard. If you bill a lot of hours, that also means that your work is well received by superiors. Superiors will only give you more work if you're doing a good job when they do give you work. And a partner who doesn't have a lot of time to give work to people a partner does not have a lot of time to give work to people who do not take their assignment seriously. So if you have a lot of work and you're billing a lot of hours, that means you're probably doing a good job. And if your work is not, well thought through and there's a lot of typos and you're not taking the time to understand your superior's point of view, then your partners are probably not going to give you more work. So you can't just make a half-assed attempt to get the work done. It's important. The important thing to think about too that I brought up and I make clear in a lot of different points, but I think is important is every assignment you get from a partner is really a gift, and you should treat it as a very important thing because it's absolutely true. Your attitude and eagerness for work. Okay, so this is the other thing that your hours show. If you get a lot of billable hours, it shows your attitude and eagerness for work. You should always have an attitude where you're hungry and enthusiastic about working. This typically sets you apart from many of your beaten down peers who may act as if they already have too much work. One of the things that I notice is that a lot of people that are very successful inside of law firms will always accept work. So even if they're asked to do work and they're very busy, they will still accept it unless it's physically impossible many times for them to do. This is a quick story about an attorney that I know that was extremely successful. He was on an airplane next to a client of the firm when the client was bitten by, I think it was a Southwest flight, by a spider. And the client's leg was hurt, and the client decided to sue the airline at the urging of his attorney, the cleaning company, and others that were involved. And it was a very frivolous case. But the attorney, who was a young associate, begged the firm to let him take it at a contingency basis and promised to continue billing all the hours each year that he was before during this time. And the attorney took on the spider bite case for free, worked late nights and every weekend in the hospital and holidays and so forth, and eventually took a trial, had a big trial with the spider bite case. And he lost, but he put in such a big effort that the client, the partners who observed him were very impressed. And it was funny because I actually saw a lot of the exhibits from the trial, and it was just a small spider bite. It wasn't even that big. It was like, and who knows why you bring a big case against an airline for that? But not after he lost the case, he was made partner at the urging of the client partners who'd observed him working on this case, and his enthusiasm impressed everyone. And he was I think he was the youngest associate to ever make partner in the firm's history. So being that eager for work is obviously a very good thing. And he was a very high biller as well. And then how you're able to get others to give you work is what also your billable hours show. Attorneys need to be able to convince others to give them work. It means you need to ask and find others who will give you work. Many times you need to ask a lot more than once. However, you should always keep asking. Expressing enthusiasm for a case or a legal matter will often make you get partners with a certain type of work to give it to you. And getting to know work is really no different than campaigning for student council or some other sort of exercise. You want people to like you. In order to do this, you need to be seen, you need to be agreeable, you need to find commonality for the people you're working with. And people will generally give work to people who ask for it, make an effort. A lot of times partners will only give work after they've become comfortable with you and you have earned a reputation for doing good work. Being inside of a firm, obviously, the more work you get, the better. Work also shows how much the hours you bill also show how much clients like you, and clients need to see you as hardworking behind the scenes. You want clients to like you, and it's very important to your success. And if a large client likes an associate a great deal, the client will demand to have the associate work on all that matters. Another thing that work does is it shows others how you make them feel about themselves. A lot of partners who slogged away and suffered through decade plus of indignities and other problems when they make partner, they want to feel respected and important. And just because the person you're working for is someone you would not consider dating in a million years, or remind you of the person you might have beaten up in high school, doesn't mean they don't deserve to feel like they're a big deal. You need to make them feel important and respected. And it's really your job. And it's the nature of your position on the totem pole when you're getting work from others to make them feel important. Just as a law firm partner will make the client feel important, others need to feel important as well. And if the partner feels good about themselves, every time they give you work, they're going to be more likely to assign you extra work later on. And if you're not nice and you contradict the person, you look at them like they're tired or drab or depressed, the odds of them giving you additional work, they're going to go down dramatically. You really need to take care of the people you're working for and make them feel good. You should offer to help them and do things for them, even whatever, want to be nice. And because these people support you. And they should feel appreciated based on the respect and the role that you give them. And because of that, they will also give you extra work. The other thing it shows is that when you get a lot of work, is it shows that you're open to learning. There are, especially young associates, there's a lot of people out there that think they know. There are lots of people out there that are very afraid of criticism and will, say, I know that every time someone makes a suggestion. And I don't necessarily understand this attitude. It doesn't work well. Large law firm partners, especially, have often spent tens of thousands of hours learning the law and working in their practice area, and they love talking about things. When you learn from people, you need to incorporate that into your work product. And if you learn from what they teach you, they will give you additional work, and they'll they'll make you feel good about that. So another reason to see, or a thing that can happen, is joining a branch office. So you have to remember that there are good and bad branch offices. A lot of times people will leave that have joined a new branch office that they don't necessarily like. They will, let me just see here, give me 1 second, working for them. And the reason for this is the main office of the law firm is typically where the main decisions will reside, and law firms in the main office will ever have good relationships. And so if you think about this for a second, if you're a New York law firm and you have a relationship with coworkers, you're going to have a relationship with them, and much more so than in an office that's far away. So leaders in the main office are often going to be under a lot of pressure to protect their people, and will let people go into branch office before making cuts at their own location. And there's generally a lot more work in the main office than the branch office. The main offices generally have a lot of clients, and a branch office may literally be started with just a few clients. And that can be the other thing that happens. And so a lot of times people will not be able to make partner and so forth if people do not even know you. So I've seen people leave branch offices, and especially local branch offices and so forth, can be very problematical. So that's not that. Let's see here. Second, another thing that can happen to people is sleeping with superiors in the office. And this is another thing that I hate to put in here, but I've seen this happen a lot more times than I can count. It's not a good idea. What happens is most relationships do not last. And if one gets very serious and it shuts down, what tends to happen is both parties may have a difficult time working together in the future. The more junior one ends up leaving or finding a reason to leave, so they don't have to see the former love interest. Another thing that can hurt you is working as a contract attorney. And I understand that people need to make a living, but once you have that in your resume, that can a lot of times hurt you, because people will wonder why they should pay you as much money as you might have been making in as a contract attorney. Why they should pay you as much money as a law firm would pay if you're willing to work for so much cheaper price. And so that can really hurt your resume. It's just another thing to think about. So I don't have a lot to say about that other than it can definitely hurt you from working in a large law firm ever again. And I think a lot of people are definitely that hurts a lot of that otherwise may do be able to get a job in a large law firm. Another thing that large law firms don't like is when you take too much time off. Having a child or getting sick and these sorts of things may be natural, but if you take too much time off, you're often going to be seen as lacking drive, commitment, and you'll often come back from your absence to find that no one is willing to give you work. I've seen people get fired for taking vacations. I've seen people have bad reviews and then take vacations and then get fired for that. So you have to be very careful. And this, it's just kind of how it works. So if you take too much time off, many times the law firm is going to have issues with you. I've seen people take paternity leave. A lot of law firms will allow paternity leave, but if they see people do that, then they often will not like it and be prejudiced against them. And I've seen a lot of people take it and come back and not have jobs waiting for them. I'm not saying that every firm's like that, but they certainly, I would tell you to be very careful with things like that, because if you take too much time off, the law firm is just think that you're not taking your career seriously. Now, I would, for maternity leave, I think they definitely take that seriously, but I think that they simply, paternity leave can be very harmful to taking time off. And again, that this is just a thing. I don't need to get in too much detail about it, but once you take too much time off, law firms will often not like that because it shows a lack of commitment. Another thing that's very problematical is leaving a firm with another without another big firm job lined up. If you leave your firm without another big firm lined up, what can happen is that the law firm will assume that you're fired. Leaving a firm can be a great strategy, and especially leaving a large law firm and going to another large law firm, or a mid-size and going to a large, or a small and going to a mid-size firm, and so forth. But if you go to a firm and you work in another practice setting, or you move to a much smaller firm that's not as prestigious, most law firms will think that you're not part of their kind of club anymore, and it can definitely hurt you. And once you go to a smaller firm or take a job in a different environment, the odds of you being able to return to a large law firm are very slim. You can do a clerkship, for example, and sometimes you can go to the U.S. Attorney's Office and do things like that. But going to other practice settings and not another large law firm, if you're going to one, is difficult. The reason is that most large law firms believe that the only reason anyone would leave there to go do something else is if you don't have the nerves to work in a large law firm, or if you're fired. And unfortunately, the latter perception is a more common one. They'll assume you're fired, or maybe just didn't have the nerves, but they're likely to presume that you're fired if you're no longer with a large law firm, or believe that you left in your own volition. And even if you did leave because of your own choice, the idea is that if you leave once, you're likely to do again, which is also true. Law firms will most often not rehire anyone because they almost always leave again. And again, they create poor morale on the way out, and there's problems many times when they come back and so forth. That can hurt you. Another one is being dishonest. I don't want to talk too much about this, but I've seen people blackballed for telling minor lies. And in this particular example was a 10th year associate that was asked if he'd sent a letter. He said yes, and he hadn't. And the law firm found out about it and ended up letting him go because of that. And that was not a good thing. So people will do things like that. They'll let you go for being dishonest. So you have to be very careful about that. Another one is talking poorly about the people you work for. If you do that, many times that will come back at them. They will see that, and they'll want revenge and figure out a way to get back at you and hurt you. So you have to be very careful about what you write or say about anybody that you work with. Once you do that, they will often be very savage and come back at you. So you need to be careful about that. There's also rules of FaceTime in a lot of large law firms, not as much anymore, but you're expected many times to, not as much as there used to be, but arrive at the office at a certain time and so forth, and be available and that sort of thing. And this isn't as common as it used to be, but it's still quite common. So those are the conclusions. I know a lot of it sounds unreasonable, but generally, you do want to follow these rules to stay employed and survive. There's a lot other I could tell you, but I think those are the most important ones. This is based on an article too, by the way. So there's not a ton of other stuff to cover. And I think the article goes into a lot more detail than I did today. But I hope that's helpful. What I do know is that the people that follow these rules typically do well. Those that don't, and you can do very well if you show up and follow these rules. And so that's about it. Thank you.